So, as he said, we're travelling along Route 66, and I was fortunate enough to actually drive along Route 66 with a good friend of mine when I was visiting him in America. And do I have my first slide? Thank you. That's better, right. And yes, we were travelling along a very straight road, very big, nothing for miles and miles and miles. And then we came, it got to lunchtime, we came to a little cafe, and it was called the Roadkill Cafe. And of course we had to stop, we just had to. And I have to say I was very relieved to find that roadkill wasn't on the menu. Just burgers and ribs, that sort of thing. That's what I guess. Hope that roadkill wasn't on the menu, so yeah. You forgot to mention, you kill it, we grill it. Oh, you kill it, we grill it, yes. Okay. Yes. Oh, you did. See, I wasn't making it up. It was a story. So, today in our travels on Route 60, we're looking at Proverbs, and it's one of several wisdom books contained within the Bible, and I've sort of now come to refer to them as they're sort of God's guides as how to not become roadkill on life's highway. So the main wisdom books are Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job. There is discussion over that. Some people like to put Psalms at the beginning of that list and add Song of Songs, which I will debate for years as to whether it even should be in the Bible, but see me afterwards, yes. So these wisdom books were written because, unlike animals, mankind seeks to learn, it seeks to gain knowledge and move on. But unlike the Greeks, who were philosophers, wanted to know the meaning of life and, I think, therefore I am, that sort of thing, the Hebrews were really much more down to earth. They really just wanted to know how to live a good life, how to have health, wealth, and happiness. And that's pretty, familiar, I think, because I reckon 9 out of 10 or 9.9 people out of 10, if you ask them what are they looking for in life, it would be health, wealth, and happiness. And so wisdom was seen as a way of having a good life. It's if you have a wise life, then you have a good life. That will lead to a good life. So wisdom was highly valued, and we know that is true because King Solomon, the son of David, when asked by God what gift could he give him, he actually asked for wisdom. And as a result, he had health, wealth, and happiness up to a point. We'll come to that later. Right. So Proverbs, the outline of Proverbs is that it was believed to have been written by Solomon with a contribution from 2 other kings. It's in 3 parts. There's the father talking to the son. Then we have the wise man's sayings and proverbs in the middle. And then there's the mother talking to the son. At the very end, we get every woman's favourite passage about how to be a good wife. Well, that's a sermon for another day, okay. So it consists of prayers and sayings and proverbs, which basically are they're short, well-known, pithy sayings stating a general truth or a piece of advice. So that's what a proverb is. So what is the aim of Proverbs? Well, we're told that at the very beginning. So in Proverbs 1, verses 1 to 6, we read, "The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, are for gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for receiving instruction in prudent behaviour, doing what is right and just and fair, for giving prudence to those who are simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. Let the wise listen and add to their learning, and let the discerning get guidance. for understanding proverbs and parables, the sayings and riddles of the wise. So in short, it's to help people be wise. Okay? So it's trying to achieve a lot, isn't it, in that book? So first of all, let's just ask, what is wisdom? I mean, it comes from the Hebrew word to govern or to rule. And in this case, we're looking at governing and ruling our own lives. You know, it's basically a truth for living. It's not just knowledge, it's knowledge applied, it's knowledge in action. An example of this is Proverbs 14:4. An empty stable stays clean, but there is no income from an empty stable. I'm sure we can all relate to that one. Bit like Gwyn's driveway, when it's empty, doesn't earn an income, but when it's rugby day and it's full, he gets some money for it. So what are the characteristics of a wise person? So let me tell you first what they're not. And this, again, is a list from Proverbs. So this is Proverbs 6:16 to 19. There are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil, a false witness who pours out lies, and a person who stirs up conflict in the community. Well, I think we could pretty much get on board with that list, couldn't we? I reckon if none of that was going on, if people didn't act in any of those ways, this world would be a much better place. So, what do you think makes a wise person? Just shout out what you think makes a wise. What you think a characteristic of a wise person is? Listens. Anything else? A wise person listens. Uses discretion. If you think about a wise person, what sort of image does it conjure up? Older. How many people think of a wise person as being a teenager? Anyone who's had a teenager certainly wouldn't agree with that. But age is certainly, we tend to look at those who have, shall we say, lived more of life than others as being wise. And so old age is often associated with those words. And in the beginning of Proverbs, in that first section, wisdom is introduced as a person. It's a bit like how we talk about, Mother Nature. So wisdom is introduced as this person is talked about as a woman, as a female, and you are told that this person's been around for quite a while. So in Proverbs 8:22 to 26, we read this: "The Lord brought me forth as the first of his works, before his deeds of old. I was formed long ages ago, at the very beginning, when the world came to be. When there were no watery depths, I was given birth. When there were no springs overflowing with water, before the mountains were settled in place, before the hills, I was given birth. Before he made the world or its fields or any of the dust of the earth." So this wisdom's been around a long, long time. So if age was just an indicator of wisdom, then I think this person is top of the list. In fact, Jesus himself talks about this person, wisdom. In Matthew 11:18 to 19, it says, "For John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say he has a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, here is a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. but wisdom is proved right by her deeds. But then Paul comes along. Paul, who has written most of the New Testament, he comes along and then he takes this idea of wisdom as a person another step further. Oh, I gave him the wrong copy. Right, so I'll just about read this. Sorry, it printed out badly. So this is 1 Corinthians 1:18-24, okay? For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, the intelligence of the intelligent I will frustrate. Where is the wise person? Where is the teacher of the law? Where is the philosopher of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God, the world through its wisdom did not know him, God was pleased through the foolishness of what was preached to save those who believe. Jews demand, what was that word? Jews demand signs and Greeks look for wisdom. But we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and foolishness to Gentiles. But to those whom God has called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God. So basically, what Paul is saying here, that Jesus is wisdom. Jesus is wisdom personified as he is God's love personified. Wisdom comes from God. Jesus is God. So the wisdom that we are receiving in Proverbs comes from God. It is not just a book of clever sayings that have been written by Solomon. These are words passed down, wisdom passed down by God to Solomon. And to see what that actual wisdom now looks like in action, we have Jesus to look to. We have Jesus as that ultimate example of the wise man. So how do we aspire to being wise? Well, I suppose we could read all the wisdom books, learn them all by heart, word for word, and that will do it, and that will make us a wise person. But that doesn't seem to be the case, does it? Because how many people do we know who could recite those words backwards and forwards? Solomon wrote most of those words down in Proverbs. And what he did was he ignored a lot of God's wisdom. And as a result, he didn't end up having a life of health, wealth, and happiness. There have been many people that we know, even recently, incredibly wise people who teach to other people, we've then discovered that they're not wise in their ways of life. And that they have, as such, they have caused such harm to other people. So it's more than just knowing the words, more than just having that knowledge of what God's telling you is good and bad. And to see what that more is required of us, we need to look at these next two proverbs that are going to come up. So Proverbs 1-7, these two proverbs are incredibly well known, okay? The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Now, the fear of the Lord, it's a phrase that is not very popular these days. It sort of it's coming out of common use, that the word fear is being sort of substituted with, reverence and awe. Because it conjures up these images of this, the hell and brimstone that Ian was warning me not to talk about today. Basically, you know, do this or else God is going to, you know, send hell brimstone into you and you will be cast into hell and that sort of thing. And it's like the carrot, it's like the stick, isn't it? Do it or else, you know, that sort of thing. But I think when it comes to, you know, the situation of God's wisdom, I think it's a different kind of fear. I think it's almost a fear of fear of not actually taking notice of someone who, to be honest, needs and warrants being taken notice of. You know, you ignore God at your peril. And I've experienced this feeling, this fear of the Lord myself. 2006, world full apart, I clung to the rock, which was Jesus. I was like a limpet. I was stuck on that rock and I was not going to let go. I was going to hold on to Jesus and his teaching and his ways and his wisdom. And even though the storm around me has calmed down, I am frightened to let go of that rock because I have known such peace and comfort and has seen my life changed around so much whilst clinging to that rock that I don't want that to change. And I know and I fear that if I let go of the rock, if I let go of that way of God, then life is going to get stormy again. What I have to do is I have to trust in the Lord, the next proverb, with all my heart. And this is the thing, people, they stop trusting in the Lord and they start questioning that God's ways are right. We heard earlier that wisdom had been around since the earth was created. Now, when earthquakes go on, like in Syria and Turkey, people are always saying, why does God let things like this happen? Why did God create a world where you have earthquakes and hurricanes and tornadoes and all these volcanoes? Why does he create a world like that? Well, we know that God is wise, that God's been wise from the beginning, that God created the world with wisdom. So we have to trust that God has done that for a reason. He didn't just stick a mountain over there and, I think I'll have a big ocean there and, you know. He certainly didn't create the world like I did Sim City, in which everybody disappeared after 2 days because they hated my way of living. There was wisdom in how this world was created, and we have to trust that God's wisdom in that. And we have to lean not on our own understandings, you know. And that's the thing, we start, you know, twisting, you know, things that God has said. We start, oh yeah, but he didn't actually mean that. We really mean that. I mean, that list of people, you know, who, you know, the list of things that God hates or things, you know, the number of justifications people can come up with for acting in those ways is amazing. They just twist things and they come up with their own ways of understanding actually how the world works. What we need to do is in all ways submit to God. You know, we've got to trust him. We've got to stop trying to think we know everything. The arrogance of mankind is amazing. And we've got to submit to the one and only authority when it comes to wisdom, which is God. And we can trust God because from the very beginning, all he's ever wanted to do is love and care for us. And he's demonstrated that. He's demonstrating that through the giving of the wisdom to us. He's demonstrated that to us through giving his son, the ultimate wise man, to you learn from and see and hear from. And he's also demonstrated that with the giving of the Holy Spirit, that power that we can draw on to help us to be strong when we are trying to follow God's wisdom, to be strong and to give us guidance when we're trying to work out what is God's wisdom and what isn't. So God has demonstrated us throughout, the life of this earth and mankind, that he knows what he's doing. We just have to trust him. Now comes the disclaimer. Okay, so this should be at the end of Proverbs, because you can get the idea through reading through Proverbs that if you follow every bit of advice in this book, then you are going to have health, wealth and happiness. But as we all know, life is not like that. So really, the disclaimer should be that following every bit of advice in Proverbs does not guarantee health, wealth and happiness. And I think, there's a couple of Proverbs which are up next. Just two examples of where we could say, well, actually, the fear of the Lord adds length to life, but the years of the wicked are cut short. I think there's a lot of wicked people who unfortunately live to old age. And then the righteous person is rescued from trouble, and it falls on the wicked instead. I wonder how many of those 28,000 people that were caught in the earthquake were wicked in our eyes and God's. So what Proverbs is giving you, shall we say the average, this is what happens. But we have to recognise that things don't always go to plan, and that again, that is where trust has to really kick in. And this is also why we then have the books of Ecclesiastes and Jobs. They go on to explore further why, good things happen to wicked people and bad things happen to good people. Because it's the way of the world. So wisdom is something that we really need to seek. But to seek it, we really need to fear the Lord, be wary of ignoring God's ways, and also trust him. Because the more we trust the Lord, the easier it is then to put your life in his hands.